we're incredibly fortunate to work in this bubble that we do, and it is a bubble. Yeah. And I think when you try and explain it to people, family and friends that aren't in the industry, the money that swirls around this city, and both in what you've just described, but in just property and what people spend on furnishing a house, for example, that costs more than the average house in the UK.
Hi there, I'm Matt Stahl, and welcome to the Super Prime Property Show, where we discuss the world of super prime real estate by talking with leading designers, architects, developers, and agents. This podcast aims to explore the intricacies of the industry, delving into conversations that hopefully inspire, inform, and entertain. Before we get started, please could I ask a favor? If you're not already, could you hit the subscribe button and give us a follow? You can find us on Instagram at Super Prime Property Show. Thank you. Today on the show, we have Mr. Marc Horn. Marc is the MD and co-founder of Lucarna, a super prime interior design business. Lucarna are a prestigious and experienced design studio based in the heart of London, where stylish, bespoke interiors are created for the world's most exclusive residences. And Marc is also certainly one of the most well-connected men in the super prime sector. His journey into the super prime sector is unconventional, but fascinating nonetheless. Here we go. Mr. Marc Horn, welcome to the Super Prime Property Show.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Madsdale. It's an absolute pleasure.
Good man. You are the managing director and co-founder of Lucarna, a super prime interior design business.
I am indeed.
Not only that, but you must be one of the most connected men in the business.
I know a few people, it's fair to say.
Well, welcome to the show, mate.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Mate, so we go far back.
I'm trying to think. It's got to be
2009?
No, I think it's probably 2012, 2013.
Okay.
Because the company that shall remain nameless didn't start to 2012.
Okay, well that's definitely...
So I know that's the mark we can go by.
And I remember that as well, because that was the shift for us back then when we were developing, because we were always doing our projects with no furniture and no dressing, just selling them like a bare bones. And we can, you help us change the game on that front.
Well, also as well, I don't know if you remember how you actually found out about that company at the time.
I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure it was in Prime,
Prime Resi?
Prime Resi. And there'd been an article in there.
I do recall, yes.
And you rung up the office and I had a call because my main focus was the client side.
Yeah.
And you... that's what you requested. You needed help and assistance with dressing of one of your apartments in Belgravia.
Yeah.
You'd never done it before.
Yeah.
So
And back then, show dressing was like, someone would just put a sofa and a coffee table and maybe a Billy's bookcase over in the corner. But
I think certainly for more smaller boutique developers, the big developers that had a few hundred units to sell would always still be doing that show apartment, but they had so many to sell, whereas the smaller boutique, more refurb
super prime stuff
wasn't being done at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember coming to meet you and Torben at the Belgravia Muse House / office.
Yep.
And immediately liked both these two super cool guys in front of me. And if you remember as well, you guys weren't keen because of, I suppose, what was happening at the time in actually purchasing the dressing, the furniture, etc.
Yeah.
So between the two of us, we came up with a bit of a unique rental model that was already a rental model existing in the market.
Yeah.
But it was a very basic...
And to explain to everybody what that was, it was that once you finished the development and you had a 3,000, 4,000 square foot finished home that's done up to the nines, the problem was then when you put it on the market, you wanted to sell a lifestyle, you wanted to sell a dream to somebody. Someone can envision themselves living there, and building the house is half the job. The actual fit out, or the sort of the FF&E, if they call it in the industry, the fixtures and fittings and dressings is the other half. And as a developer, we never wanted to front £250,000 on furniture because...
I remember that that was probably how the conversation started.
Because, you never know if the buyer wants it, or they might take half, they might take a bit. So, that's how we started working together, and you solved that for us. And it was a big success.
And I think the other thing was the rental option at the time, and still is out there.
That you're offering.
That was in the market already, was very different to the structure we came up with.
Yep.
Because existing rental model would be that a company has a big warehouse full of existing stock, furniture, accessories, whatever it may be, and would put together a scheme for your property out of their warehouse. And maybe add 10% of new stock or 20% of new stock, but fundamentally you're getting used furniture that's not been designed specifically for your very valuable property.
Yeah.
And almost not fudged, but people did it well, but you weren't getting the tailored scheme that a property of that value should have. So we were obviously facing that conundrum. You didn't want to pay the full sales value, and quite rightly. I didn't offer the rental option at that time that enabled me to go from a warehouse and pick everything you wanted, which I don't think would have been right at that time. It certainly got better over the years, but then it was, I think, in its infancy. So that's where we came up with the structure of actually, we'll create it from new as if you're buying it, but you take it on a rental option.
Yeah.
So that you weren't stuck with the furniture. We still owned it. Everybody was happy. And we took the risk as a business that hopefully the buyer would come in, take it as is. You'd have to buy the furniture from us, or the buyer would have to do so.
And I think in most instances, the buyer bought
Correct.
like 70%
Easy.
of the stuff. And we're talking everything. We're all the way down to vases and cutlery in the drawers and cushions and, the whole soaps in the bathroom, everything.
Turn up with their suitcase.
Exactly.
So it worked well for us. We were able to provide you with the quality of the furniture and everything that went with it, along with the correct design, but we had our costs covered.
Yeah.
And so we then owned the asset, and you had a great deal that gave you that flexibility, and nobody in the market was doing it at that time.
Probably a good show flat to win other business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that we do now and then within Lucarna. It's not part of our main business. We don't advertise it.
Yeah.
But if we have, because we don't carry stock, I know I'm deviating slightly, but we never carry stock. But we do have clients now and then that want that type of offering, and I come up with exactly the same model.
Great.
It works.
Yeah.
So it has transcended through that time period and still is now something that's appealing to clients with a certain value of property. And obviously it doesn't work in big multi-unit schemes because it just doesn't become economical, but more in the single asset, multi-unit, smaller boutique, then it makes sense.
And we did either 5 or 6 apartments on Eaton Place in Belgravia. We did 2 Muse houses. Boscobel Place. Eaton Muse North.
Yeah, so Boscobel was the last one that I was involved in before I left the company I was at. And I think that was the first interior architecture project for you.
Yeah, full design
specification, which
that was a 3,000 square foot
with a winter garden.
Yes, with the famous winter garden.
Very, very cool house
where we had the retractable glass roof on the top, so you could literally lie in the bath and open the roof above you. Very
smart house. But if you remember going back to Eaton Place, the lower ground and ground floor duplex that achieved record pricing.
They did, set record price, 3,200 a square foot for a ground and lower.
Years. Yeah.
About 10 years ago. I think that's 2016, 2015.
8 years ago. Yeah, so big money for a lower ground and ground floor.
When we started our first development that I was working on Eaton Place, we were doing the flat below the Candies.
Yeah,
I think it was 2000. Well, I was just a junior working for the company back then, but they were doing the flat below the Candies, and the Candies achieved £1,000 a square foot, and we were like, "Wow, if we could ever get £1,000 a square foot, man, that would just be." And then a few years later, we're getting that on three times that on a ground and lower.
And it's not that long ago, is it? Really?
No,
so
it's not.
£1,000 a square foot.
Absolutely crazy.
End value. You can't buy a rundown ruin for that now.
Absolutely. So
it's just crazy how quickly it's moved on.
Yeah.
And I think as well how quickly that market has matured.
Yeah.
As well.
Well, the super prime sector, the standard in London is just
And I think you guys were very much a driver behind that. And I know you were more of a discreet developer under the radar, but what always impressed me was just the level of finish and detail that you guys were able to achieve. On a developer spec.
Sure.
Basically, it wasn't a private client, it was a business. So you were doing it within a budget, and you always managed to I've said to many people over the years that that was one thing that impressed me more than anything, because as you can imagine, the amount of property I've seen at very high values, and the finish is just.
But you say, and that's great. And you say that, and then sometimes you go to these extremes to build such detail into the design or into the development itself, whatever, which you're so proud of. But then, you sometimes get the agents round and they don't even notice, and they're going around showing the buyer. You don't even think they notice, but what they do notice is is the standard of the it's the FF&E. The standard of the sofas and the beautiful dining table and all that, all the little bits and pieces that make it feel like I don't want to say a hotel suite, because that's a bit of a cliche, but it feels like a finished product, a home,
calm, and relaxing,
a home away from home for most of these clients.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's such a crucial thing. And I remember going back many years, my infancy and what I did, which has predominantly always been client side. I'm not a designer, I've never been one, and never say I am. And I met a developer in Cobham. We used to do a lot of business in Cobham, the company I was at before the company that we work with you guys.
Yep.
And one particular developer, so you're talking 4,000-5,000 square foot new build houses. And the developer dressed everything.
Okay, himself.
Well, we did. We dressed it. But the detail he went to, so he would never let an agent show round the potential buyer.
Yeah.
He would let them bring the buyer, but he would never let them show round, because he said it'd take 10-15 minutes for them to show it round. It takes me an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about discussing where and how to dress the houses, he would say, right, this is where I'm going to stand. This is the view I want. This is the money shot for the principal suite. This is the detail he went through, and he achieved 10% more on his properties than any other developer in that area.
I read that
purely because of that.
Yeah, I read that when the Candies were doing One Hyde Park, they did their own. I don't know if it's true, but there's so much press when they launched One Hyde Park. But I read they were doing their own viewings as well. They had their own sales guys doing their own viewings. And I remember saying to the agents we were working at the time that I'd like to be present on the viewings.
Yeah.
Not to take over, but just to point out the stuff they don't miss and maybe ask questions, because I know what every material. I know that American black walnut has come from what part of North America it's come from, or I know what that Spanish marble. I went to the yard down in Spain and chose that marble. So there's much more context to give, and the agents got no idea. But they were always reluctant. I think they just didn't. They just they were always like, oh, maybe on the third viewing, or But it was hard. Yeah, we gave up in the end.
With a house we'll mention later, the owner did the same, because it was not just about the quality of finish, it was also about how difficult the finish was. So solid stone floors, solid stone cantilevered staircase, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And just the process that you had to go through, or he had to go through to get that done. Everybody walks in and goes, oh, that looks like a very nice solid stone staircase. But actually the process behind that and the detail in terms of the timing, how long it takes, and the process for that is so in depth that there's a value to that.
And if there's a story to it, of craftsmanship.
Yeah,
that isn't really respected, I think, a lot.
And why?
Why?
So it's a big thing. I think that's always helped us as a company to understand what the developer's trying to achieve, and making sure that we're I suppose putting that property and home and asset into its most favourable light. Then we're almost like marketeers as much as anybody else involved in that process, because we are marketing that property to sell in its best light, and making sure whoever walks round is blown away and doesn't want to see anything else and walks away buying it. That's the main thing what we do.
And we'll get onto this later, but as a track record, you guys have mostly typically worked more for the high-end developers and less private clients, and that's changing now, but we'll get onto that in a second. Tell me a bit about Lucarna.
So Lucarna is a high-end design studio. We're a very small boutique company with a very talented team of interior architects that work with us. I suppose we're different to a lot of companies within our sector, that as sort of owners, founders of the business, we have no design background. We're not interior designers. We very much always the client side. So we run the business on the financial client side, and we have a very talented team that basically do all the design work. So we don't have the name above the door that then is the lead or design director or head of design.
Yeah.
So we very much have the team that they move forward in their own direction as they see fit, because that's what we bring them into the team to do.
So would you say then that in it's almost like your look the look that you deliver can really differ
100%.
to this, makes you more versatile to whatever scheme you're working on, rather than being, like you say, like a name designer that's kind of got a particular look that's molded into whatever they're working on.
And people have often asked us over the years, do you have a particular look? And we absolutely don't, because we don't have that involvement. We don't have that one person driving it. We have a design director, a fantastic designer in Charlotte. But she's very much, I suppose, the ethos of the business has been with us for 7 years. She very much takes that in the direction that we have, that we don't have that look and feel. Sometimes, unfortunately, the website can look like that because of who we've worked with over the years, and they very much have their own look and feel, and you've got to follow a process to
times change and design. Trends move.
And so quite often the private clients, you're not allowed to show what you've done on that.
Absolutely.
But very often it's the case of that's, I suppose, been one of our mantras over the years. We don't have a company look and feel. That's not what we do. If you want a yellow sofa with pink spots and whatever, that's fine. That's your choice. That's what you want as a client. So we're very happy to do that and facilitate that and have the team to do so.
We've worked with some designers in the past that would not take your desires or your wishes on board. You know, they would just like, it is my way or the highway. You know, I mean, it wasn't a development when we did, but my colleague, you know, he had his own house designed and he wanted more storage, or he wanted more, you know, he wanted the large book collection. He wanted to have this out on display and whatever. I remember the fights. You know, like literally fights about saying, I want somewhere to put my books, you know, and I want, you know, you just have to, everyone's so different, you know, and especially in London where you're working for such a enormous demographic. It's truly global clientele. You know, you can't shoehorn yourself into.
No, and you've got to be collaborative, haven't you? And I think we do have developer clients, and some are particularly easy to work with, which are fantastic for us because they just trust what we do and we facilitate that within their budget, and we come up with a design look, but we're taking into consideration the location value, who their likely buyers are, etc. But from a private client point of view, it's great to be collaborative with the client and even developers as well moving forward. Sometimes you've got to be a little bit stronger with developer clients if you believe, and we believe that that's the right way, and we can prove that, because personal taste can get involved, and sometimes that personal taste is not correct. I can see something that we've done that looks absolutely amazing. I wouldn't have any of it in my home, but it's right for the property. And
you get some egos as well. They get some out of control. They want their initials in the on the floor in the hallway. And
it's not actually here, but I mean, when we pre-COVID were looking at New York and seeing what the opportunities were out there, and we got shown around a couple of amazing properties, and the stories we were hearing about the rock star interior designers in the States, you just couldn't believe it. And we pitched for an apartment, beautiful 4,000 square foot lateral apartment overlooking Central Park, 520 Park, I think was the development. And who shall remain nameless, they just had a show apartment done. And they gave the designer, I think it's $4 million to do two.
Right.
And he refused to do any sort of proposal. Refused to do any sort of presentation proposal. I'm not showing you what you're getting. You'll get what I give. And they weren't allowed to call it a show apartment because he'd done it, so it had to be renamed something else. Right. But they weren't allowed to say that's what had been facilitated. They had to dress it up in some other way because he didn't do show apartments, but did.
Yeah.
And they wait for a long period of time for the apartment to be done and finished. He rocks up and he does one for $4 million. That's it.
And just leaves the other one.
Yeah.
And
just leaves the other one.
And just said, well, I spent too much.
I needed to spend 4 million, so I've only done one.
Okay.
And I haven't done any artwork because I've got a gallery that's going to put it in for free, so there wasn't artwork included.
And the $3 million went to him? Or
well, you're walking around and it was not a very particularly exciting an amazing show apartment to look at. And then we went and saw a private client for a project through a high-end contractor that we know. And the guy saying this, the guy who owns it was a billionaire, complete refurb of this beautiful townhouse. And one particular thing was coffee table. And he said, there's a coffee table coming and it's $120,000. And we're just like, what? Then we get told the husband of the couple, who's a family that were moving in, just didn't like the interior designer at all and was looking to buy somewhere else, but didn't sack him, just continued.
Yeah.
And he's spending millions and millions of dollars with a designer that he didn't like, who was telling them what they should have.
Yeah.
They didn't like that, but they just rolled over because it was deemed to be cool in their circle of friends that they were using this particular interior designer. But he was telling them what they should have in their own home. And the guy's, I've had enough, and he was off buying something else. And you're just like,
wow,
how does that happen? And I think it's quite a common story.
You do hear often stories about kind of like, they're not the call them superstar names in the design. Well, also the same with architects, and, in that space where they're so, and then the, your billionaire clients get attracted to them and they want to use them for the name and the the sort of, I guess, the show off effect. The kudos of it.
Yeah.
And then you hear the story and you just think the whole thing is a disaster. Yeah. Not always, of course. But
no.
Often you just, when you work in a sort of more in a community, like in London, there's, everyone almost knows each other and everyone knows each other's work. And it's much more, it's a lot, not regulated, but it's like, it's a more of a professional, value-driven environment than 100%. A lot of these.
And that was very clear to us with the States and New York. And since we've looked at other stuff out there, is that we are very much budget driven in London compared to the States. And when we pitch for
that you want to deliver value for money.
Well, this particular project, and we didn't win it. Something I can't remember what happened in the end, but I think we went in at, say, $750,000,
mm-hmm.
and this thing was amazing. And we very much went down the route of the Savile Row Taylor, the Aston Martin luxury, certainly more so now. Aston Martin's obviously a lot better than it was maybe 10 years ago, but it was very much that the craftsmanship,
the Marc,
the leather detail. It was that elements of the finishes, very much bringing that London-esque finish, tailored suit to this apartment, which was very different. And we went in at a normal margin, everything else, and they said, it seems too cheap. We would expect this to be double this. And we're like, well, we're just going in at what we'd expect to make. And they were just like, that doesn't make sense. And it just seemed to be one of those markets where, you can almost charge what you want, where here you've got to be so price conscious.
Yeah.
Even now with the private clients, I mean, you might get lucky and find somebody that doesn't care about what they spend. But most people now are very astute.
Yeah,
and know what things cost.
Absolutely.
And it's very easy to find out what things cost now with the internet and everything else. So people are a lot more astute.
Yeah.
So
we're working on a house at the moment where there's a £600,000 kitchen going in. But at the same time, we're having weekly visits with the client reps, looking at the price of the window furniture, the standard of the painting on the windows, or all the little bits and pieces. Everything is scrutinized. So even though they'll spend big, because they have the money. I mean, these houses are often in the tens of millions, but people want value from it, don't they?
Exactly. I know somebody was telling me this the other day. They're doing a project in Surrey. I won't go into too much detail, where a tree house is going in. I think it's 1.5 million.
No way.
I mean,
amazing.
Yeah, 1.5 million for your tree house.
My word.
So the people will spend money, but they do know what things cost. And I think, as I said earlier, the London market has matured incredibly quickly over the last 10 years. And I don't think what was a big surprise, especially when we went to the States, was I always had this vision of America being really cool, and certainly New York being really cool and cutting edge, and it basically wasn't. It's an amazing city, the vibrancy of it and everything else. Just a very cool city. Just love New York. But the design direction, we are just so much more on it in London than New York. It was just quite mind-blowing, to be honest, that how far they seemed behind us. And that was fashion, that was the developments, that was pretty much everything. It just, wow, this is...
But you could just see as well, you know, how much work, especially out in the Middle East at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say there's any conviction that I know this for a fact, but it seems to me that it's so many British brands like yourselves working out in the Middle East because they want, you know, they come here as well and spend time in London, you know, but they want that standard of design and quality and workmanship and everything that comes from.
Yeah, and I would say there's probably, it's us in Italy, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's where if you're a very wealthy individual and you want design to the best it can be at any given time, it's probably London and Italy that will come up in terms of maybe the French in terms of the design, in terms of the interior design. So maybe that as well. But there's very few other countries that are ever mentioned in the same breadth in terms of, as you say, international buyers that straight away, the kudos of having a dinner party and telling your friends that it's being done by your New York apartment or your Dubai Hills house is being done by a London-based interior design company. Yeah, it always sounds great.
It does. Yeah,
and I think, and to a degree, it
will be great.
It will be great, absolutely. But also, until I went to the States, if somebody said, "Oh, we're having our designers based in New York," it'd be the same.
Yeah,
wow, that's cool.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
So, but very, very few.
Yeah,
and I think when we were in the States and what we've done recently is that we've very much stuck to that mantra of the Savile Row suit, because in the States, no different to here, you'll have a Japanese designer, maybe have an Indian designer, you'll have a Chinese designer, you'll have whoever, you have a multitude of different international designers.
True, yeah.
So there's no point in us trying to do a Japanese-based Japandi design when we're a London-based studios, which works really well in London, and it's very, I suppose, in London we do everything. So what, as we touched on earlier, but with the States, we very much were focused and purposely pigeonholed ourselves as the Savile Row designer. So if you want Japandi, it's not us, but then people wouldn't come to us. But if you want all about the finish and the materials and the detail and the craftsmanship and that very contemporary classic look, then that's what we do. And it's very different then almost to what the designer who's done the projects I mentioned was based in Miami would do to the Japanese design. So you could pigeonhole yourself. You can't do that in London because you'd fall over very quickly. It wouldn't work.
You would.
So
what about some of your more recent projects that you've done?
So I think in terms of our sort of stuff we're very proud of, recently we did a 7,000 square foot Grade 2 listed house on Wilton Crescent.
Yeah.
Hadn't been touched for 40 years.
Yeah.
We were brought in by...
It's got to be the finest, in my opinion, it's got to be the finest street in
fantastic. For me, though, it always has that slight negativity. I still can't get my head around a house that's worth 40 or 50 million and you're 4 steps away from the pavement, from your front door. That always blows my mind.
Yeah.
But apart from that, you're absolutely right. It's a stunning location. We were brought in by a fantastic architect called Lee's Associates.
Oh, yeah.
They brought us into the team. It was for a sovereign fund, a Middle Eastern sovereign fund. They'd owned the asset for a ridiculous amount of time and done nothing with it. And somebody's pointed out, maybe we should do something with that very valuable asset that's been sitting there.
Yeah. Did it have the mews at the back?
No, unfortunately didn't have the connected mews. But I think it was an embassy before, but then hadn't been bought, or hadn't been touched. So it was complete rack and ruin, and we went in and we were responsible for the full interior architecture for that, all the way down to the bespoke FF&E. Yeah. And that was a fantastic project, just to see something transform like it did over a period of time, longer than it should have taken because it was through COVID, which didn't help. But they actually quite unusually retained it for the rental market.
Right. What's it achieving, do you know?
I know I probably shouldn't say, but I know it achieved nearly double what they had it in their books for when it...
Really?
It rented...
50 grand a week?
No, not as much as that.
Not as much as that.
But it also, what was quite good, the actual client took it on the basis of our design proposal. So we were already in the process of manufacturing procurement, but they took it about a month before completion. So we hadn't done anything in terms of the FF&E, but we were able to convince the client, for our ultimate client, that they would actually take it. So they took the actual place fully furnished on our actual design proposals. So the client was very happy because they had it let on a 2-year deal prior to completion.
Nice.
Nearly double their expected rent. So
not bad.
That was very cool. That was great in terms of just a very historic, I suppose, and traditional home in London.
You know, we did well, the development company I worked for, we did a just when we were starting back in around 2010. They'd bought one of the houses on Wilton Crescent. Actually, they bought all the flats and assembled it into a house, and they were bought from Chris Evans.
Right. Okay.
It was back then when he was married to Billy, and I don't know if he was in the press every day for just being absolutely smashed.
With Paul Gascoigne and Danny Baker.
And like the diplomatic police kept getting called because he was trying to climb into his window. Wow. You know, pissed in the middle of the night. But anyways, that sold around, I think it was 2010, 2011 for just over 10 million.
Wow.
And it was next to the Singaporean embassy. Yeah. And I saw last year, it's not the same house, but next to it, came on at 22 and a half. Same, exactly the same.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It is. There's a lot of people that made a lot of money
doing nothing,
just sitting on an asset in prime central London
on the right street. That's what super prime's about, isn't it? It's the best in the best of the best, or best in class.
No, absolutely. And that was a fantastic project for us. And then probably my favourite project that we've ever been involved in is a new build house in W10, and predominantly 5,000 square foot, predominantly new build. There's a little element that was retained within an existing building, but the rest of it was a beautiful lateral, ultra contemporary 3-story home. So the principal suite on the first floor on its own, nice. Then your sort of ground floor living, and then your sub floor cinema, gym, bedrooms, but amazing gardens and light wells, etc. So the bedrooms and the lower ground went out into this little courtyard. So you had full height ceilings, you were out into a little garden when you were in the lower ground. Nice. As well as the actual, obviously, traditional garden.
Is that for a private client or a developer?
That was for a private client.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Specification, this was when I was mentioning about the stone that they'd used throughout.
Oh, the cantilevered.
Yeah, the specification out of this world, because obviously from a private client point of view, they wanted to do it for their own specification. Just a very, very, very cool house. It took a long time because in the conservation area. Mm-hmm. So I first met the client in 2017.
Right.
And it recently completed. So there's a massive long sort of planning process within that. And in that time, they started a young family and decided they actually wanted to live further out, sort of in the suburbs, out in sort of the Berkshire, sort of Surrey areas. They got a lot more for their money and a lot more open space. So now it's just on the market now, currently with Sotheby's International.
How much for?
Just under 13.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So not the most valuable in that sense, but just an amazing one-off project that will never or highly unlikely ever be replicated, just because of the planning issues with it to create that property and home within that space.
And it's so hard to do that.
I think it's impossible now.
It's near on impossible. I mean, to go out in W10 and get it still is very,
exactly.
very special.
And to build at that specification again would probably be 50% more than what he did it for, and he did it. It was a very high budget to start with. So to add another 50% on, it all starts to become something that you'll never achieve. So just a really unique house that we're very proud to be involved in. So we did all of the bespoke FF&E. 90% of it was manufactured in Italy, and down to just details with we manufactured through our supplier. They had relationship with BB Italia, so we manufactured this modular, I think it's a bubble sofa, the sofa.
Yeah, I know.
We did that 3 years ago, and then they've all become the the rage. Actually, BB Italia brought back a fabric, this champagne fabric that they hadn't used since the 70s, just for this one-off sofa. So there was really amazing detail to every piece and thoughtfully sort of.
And that's the joy about working with a private client as opposed to a developer, because the developer would be like, well,
it's fabric's a fabric.
It's fabric's a fabric, and I don't, but where they'll say, well, I want that, let's bring it back out of commission, let's make it, let's do something special. Yeah, and unique. That makes it their home.
Absolutely unique. So that was just a great project to work on as well.
Great.
So
and what about now? What are you underway with at the moment?
So we are, I suppose, one of the sort of really exciting projects for us at the moment is a 4-bed apartment on Lowndes Square.
So lateral.
Be
nice.
About 2,000 square feet. So not massive, but just a really nice size.
Mm-hmm.
Again, great condition, but hasn't been touched by the family for 20 years. So we're going in to do the full refurb, some reconfiguration, because I think two of the bedrooms haven't got en suites.
Mm-hmm.
So they're quite big bedrooms. So they want to reconfigure to get en suites into each bedroom. So some small reconfiguration within the layout. But with that, we are the umbrella. So we're the interior architect, but then we bring in the contractor.
Sure.
The architect.
Almost like the PM in many ways, yeah.
Whoever's needed for that project. So that's a really exciting one, because that's, again, all the way down to all the bespoke furniture, all the joinery, down to the knives and forks. And then...
So they will literally come back to the UK and with a suitcase and just move back in.
So they've got a second property. They've probably got a multitude of them.
Yeah.
But the next one is a 3-bed at Knightsbridge Court on Sloane Street.
Mm.
And what they've done is they've just moved, that was empty. So they've moved their furniture out of that one into Knightsbridge Court, while this project is underway. And then finish this and have all a bespoke turnkey solution for them on that. And then they'll chuck away the furniture in Knightsbridge Court and we'll start on.
They just have spare properties as a storage unit for their other furniture.
And to use when they come over in the summer. Yeah. Obviously, location-wise, it's fantastic for them. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
It's a different world. And I think...
makes sense.
We're incredibly fortunate to work in this bubble that we do. And it is a bubble. Yeah. And I think when you try and explain it to people, family and friends that aren't in the industry, the money that swirls around this city... and both in what you've just described, but in just property and what people spend on furnishing a house, for example, that costs more than the average house in the UK. We do get, and we have to sort of bring our...
They spend more than on a kitchen than the average price of a home in the UK.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to bring the designers back in, because it's like, it becomes a number, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's an irrelevant figure, but actually you sit back and go,
hang on a second. That's 50 grand for a duvet.
It's just crazy, and that you have to sort of bring yourself back to the real world sometimes, because I think most of the time we don't operate and work in one.
Yeah,
I certainly don't live in one. I live outside of London.
How did you end up in the super prime sector?
Would it be described as by luck, or I don't think it was
or
judgment?
Hard work, or
So yeah, I mean, I've probably again got a very different route into the prime market than a lot of my sort of, I suppose, other companies and people that work in the marketplace. I left school and I was a printer. I was a lithographic printer by apprentice. So that's where I started. My dad had been a printer, and
where was that?
This is in Hayes, on the outskirts of London. They said they'd give me a chance in print sales. And I still remember to this day, they just sacked one of the reps, and I had this big Volvo V70 estate they gave me, which was just not very suitable for my, what's the word I'm looking for? Persona. Well,
what you wanted to?
I think I should have been having at least a little
smoother
sports car. A big Volvo family estate was not really conducive to what I was.
Most salesmen have Mondeos, don't they?
Exactly, a Mondeo would have been better. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you remember the old Volvo V70s. They were huge, great big things.
Cars.
And that was an incredibly tough industry. So I went to the recruitment company, I think, that got me into the previous job locally. And they said, we've just got this really unusual position for a company to basically sell interior design and show homes based in Chiswick.
Okay.
I didn't even know that industry existed.
Yeah.
That people did that as a complete package. I know furniture shops and you buy your sofa, but the fact that that existed as an actual industry where people went and did that. So got the job as a sales manager within that company, TFS Furniture, TCFS.
Yeah, not DFS. Yeah.
No, not DFS. TCFS, the Contract Furniture Specialist, they were called.
Okay.
And as you can see, that's why they called themselves TCFS.
Yeah.
And very little interior design. It was all about show apartments, and very much they were the early doors of furnishing all the apartments over in Canary Wharf, etc., for investors, landlords.
Yeah, for like foreign, almost foreign investors are buying up the flats.
Exactly. And very much at that time, the rental market was shifting towards furnished requirement for places like Canary Wharf. So there's a huge amount of business going on, but very, very small amount of companies offering that. So really enjoyed that. But then saw a big opportunity in Spain. My mum had moved out there, went out there and saw all these property going up that had to be furnished, holiday homes.
Marbella or?
No, initially where my mum lived was up near in Almeria, but had an opportunity with a company that had already started something out in Marbella. So went down there, was quite starstruck by Porta Banús, sitting there with the Ferraris and Rolls Royces and everything.
How old were you then?
28, I want to say 29. So big eye opener.
Yeah.
And just moved out there with my first wife and my daughter, who turned 21 last week. Last week or the week before. So she was 18 months at the time.
Wow.
Went out there, started this or got involved in this business, and again just doing show homes for developers, etc. Some private clients, but all the clients were Northern European, basically.
Sure.
So either British or Northern European. So we were able to offer quite a nice alternative to what was the Spanish offering in terms of modern, sleek sort of furniture rather than the very sort of robust, heavy Spanish furniture. That company did very well until the property crash.
And the bubble burst.
I mean, that burst massively. That properly
imploded.
Yeah, that wasn't like here when we say about that. That just stopped.
Yeah.
So moved back to the UK, and at the time probably didn't want to go back into this industry, but couldn't get a job doing anything else because although we were talking about a business that had 3 or 4 people, it still said owner or MD or whatever on my CV, and people I'm meeting an MD of I think it was a stationery business, and he's going, I'm not going to employ you because you'll take all my clients. Yeah. So went back into the industry with a company called Imagine Furnishings, which were very much an investment company, but actually did all the design and furnishing for their investors. Did that for a short period of time, and then went to another company based in Surrey. And there they were doing very much entry-level sort of design and show apartments, but they wanted to create a high-end brand. So my 2 previous business partners were at the same company, and we created a high-end brand, which become very successful in a very short period of time.
Yeah, and that's around the time we met, I guess.
That was probably about the time soon after that we met. So we had a design studio on Lots Road. It was all very cool and very smart. And so that was very good. And then the business structure changed. The owners wanted to come back into the business, long story short. So the 3 of us went out and we started a new luxury design company, which did amazing things, went from the 3 of us to 60 people in about 3 years.
Yeah.
So just a very cool brand, great company at what they did. But I just wanted to, I think, have more control.
Yep.
So then left there and then started Lucarna. Whereas the companies before, we'd had and done a lot of business in Surrey and Wentworth, etc., St George's Hill. Lucarna's been very much focused on central London initially, but we have done projects recently, one in Esher for a private client, etc. We're doing a fantastic project in Taplow on the riverside, some grade 2 listed boat houses, which has been amazing on interior architecture. So for the right project, we'll come out and re-emerge from London, but it's been very much London centric. And we're fortunate to work with some great clients. We're just about to embark on a couple of show apartments for Centrepoint for Almacanter.
Yeah.
So
wow.
we've already worked with them in the past. Fantastic, iconic
I've
development.
seen the apartment you did.
Yeah, saw apartment 64, which was great.
Beautiful.
So we're just doing some more projects with them.
Right.
So they're a great client to work with and for, and an iconic, obviously, landmark development.
Absolutely.
But again, it's, as you touched on earlier, just what we're looking to do now moving into the future. I think we're now more focusing on the private client side of the London property market.
And ultimately, you're running a global business now.
Global, I think, let's keep, that's probably smoke and mirrors global business, but we've had opportunities in other countries.
Well, you're doing a 52-story tower.
We've done the design direction and for a 52-story tower in the States, which is amazing, which is currently in planning.
Wow.
Which has been quite a long process. So we've worked very closely with the developer to work on all the design elements internally. We brought in a London architect, Wolf Architects, to work with us to do the exterior. So they did the exterior renderings and the look and feel of this tower.
Okay.
So that's very exciting if it happens. So that was brought to us. In that we didn't go looking for it in that fact.
Sure.
It's just something to come across. We were delighted and amazed to be involved with. So that'd be fantastic if that proceeds to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
We have designed a bespoke range of FF&E furniture predominantly for a luxury management company in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just waiting for that to go to its final stage. So that's really cool. Last year we did a penthouse in Barcelona, which was a really exciting project to be involved with. And we're looking at some potential opportunities in Dubai, but still with the same small team.
Sure.
So it's global, I think, is a stretch.
Yeah.
But we're happy to go where the opportunity is. And as you mentioned earlier, those locations are some very cool locations with obviously very affluent people that are acquiring their homes there. So we'll see where that transpires and how we move forward on that, but it's potentially a very exciting avenue for the business as we move forward.
That is very much focused now on the private client sector as opposed to be the developer side. Yeah,
very much so. Very much.
And where are you finding getting your clients from?
So I think
they coming to you.
The business when we started, it was great to be involved with. We did some lovely projects for developers. And it gave us great exposure to the market. So it was the easiest route in that sense. But now we've been very much focused on the private client route. So architects, project managers, even planning consultants are very much our route to those avenues of opportunity. Whereas if you go back to the start and maybe 2 years ago, it was agents.
Yeah.
It was knocking on the door of marketing suites. So over the years, I've pounded the streets and knocked on the sales suites of these developments in London, and that's the easiest route sometimes to that.
Thousands of lunches,
thousands of lunches. Yeah, that's distant memory, and
as we sit in the midst of dry January.
Well, exactly, but now it's that those are the sort of avenues that you need to be focusing on now, really, to get to the private client work. It's the architects, it's the PMs, and it's the planning consultants. So we've got some fantastic people that we're building relationships with on that side.
And that's what it's all about, really, is relationships, because it's the same 100%. In our game, is that, people, other architects or who bring you in because they trust you. They know that you'll deliver, a product for it. And it's if they're the architect bringing you in, they know that you're going to deliver their vision. And it's going to come out how they imagined it. Whereas, it's about, that's what we're good at in the super prime sector. It's everyone can recommend.
Yeah, and
it's the best for its job.
We don't and haven't approached a sort of scattergun approach. We've got relationships that we're very much nurturing and building on, because it's a mutually beneficial industry. You've got to give opportunity back.
You do,
and if you don't, then the relationship can end quite considerably sooner than you'd hope for.
Yeah.
So it's focusing on the right partnerships that we want to be involved with, and the right companies, and spending our time and resource on those and just building those up, and then being able to give them back an opportunity as well as them giving us. And that's sort of what makes the world go round in the London property market. So a shift change for us, but it's been a relatively easy one because of the people we already knew that could then introduce us to people. And then it's down to us then to make sure that we're doing the right thing and so obviously making sure that the opportunity that comes across their desk comes our way.
Exciting times ahead, mate.
Definitely. I think 2023 was tough for most people.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you say it was a great year, you were either incredibly lucky or you're lying.
Mm.
Everybody seems to have been very happy to get rid of 2023 and is now a lot more positive on 2024.
Yeah.
So that's really now forget everything that's happened and now focused on what's in front of us in the future.
Great.
And see what transpires.
Great. And Mark, finally, this show is sponsored by the Better Home Company.
Yep.
You've worked extensively with them.
I have indeed.
What do you love about them?
I think, again, it's quality and attention to detail. And I think there's very much of the old mantra, pay cheap, pay twice. And I think when you've been in an industry so long, you learn that very quickly.
Yeah.
So you make sure that you go to the right people that are going to, I think, reflect you as a business as well in terms of the quality. And with the Better Home Company, that's absolutely what we get. And I think it's great to have that flexibility on. Better Home have done it's quite a big job in terms of value for what it should be in that sense, but whether it's the wallpapering of a whole 7,000 square foot house in Hampstead or to a project on St George's Hill, whatever it may be, and everything in between, I think the skill base and the experience and knowledge that's there is phenomenal. So it works with us very well.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for coming on, mate.
No worries.
This show is brought to you in partnership with the Better Home Company. The Better Home Company provides exceptional construction and aftercare for luxury projects across the UK and EU.